Good morning and welcome to Monday morning, November the 29th. And we move on today in our look at the Lord's Prayer within the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. This is Matthew 6:10. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Title of this reading today, this lesson, God's Will. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Meister Eckhart. Nothing makes a true man but the giving up of his will. The only perfect and true will comes from entering into God's will and being without self-will. For the whole perfection of man's will means being in harmony with the divine will by willing what God wills and the way he wills it. Wow. The only perfect and true will comes from entering into God's will and being without self-will. For the whole perfection of man's will means being in harmony with the divine will by willing what God wills and the way he wills it. To break that one down. At the time when the angel appeared to our dear Mary, nothing that she had done would ever have made her the mother of God. But as soon as she gave up her will, at that same hour she became mother of the eternal Word and conceived God in that hour. Never has God given himself, nor will he ever give himself to an alien will. Only where he finds his will does he impart himself and leave himself with all that he is. This is the true inner detachment. In it, the spirit stands immovable in the face of everything that befalls it, whether it is good or bad, honor or disgrace or calumny, just as a broad mountain stands immovable in the face of a little breeze. Just people hunger and thirst so very much for the will of God, and it pleases them so much that they wish for nothing else and desire nothing different from what God decrees for them. If God's will should please you in this way, you would feel just as if you were in heaven, regardless of what happens or does not happen to you. But those who desire something different from God's will get what they deserve. They are always in misery and trouble. People do them a great deal of violence and injury, and they suffer in every way. We deafen God day and night with our words, Lord, thy will be done. But then when God's will does happen, we are furious and don't like it a bit. When our will becomes God's will, that is certainly good. But how much better it would be if God's will were to become our will. But as it is now, when you are sick, of course you don't want to be well again against God's will, but you wish that it were God's will for you to get well. And when things are going badly for you, you wish that it were God's will for you to be getting along nicely. But when God's will becomes your will, then if you are ill, it will be in God's name. If your friend dies, it will be in God's name. Anyone who by God's grace unites his will purely and completely with God's will has no need other than to say in his ardent longing, Lord, show me what is thy dearest will and give me the strength to do it. And God will do this as truly as he lives, and to such a one he will give in great abundance and all perfection. There is nothing a man is able to offer God that is more pleasing to him than this kind of detachment. God cares less for our watching, fasting, or praying than for this detachment. God needs nothing more from us than a quiet heart. I dare to say that such people are happy in these times, for everything that happens to them is what they want. They love God in everything, and because of that, their joy is in everything and about everything at all times in the same way. This is man's perfection, to be detached from and stripped of everything created, to conduct himself uniformly in everything and toward everything, to be neither broken by misfortune nor puffed up by good fortune, nor to feel greater joy about this than about that, neither greater joy nor greater fear. For the one who truly loves everything apart from God, who is the true being, becomes a nothing, nothingness itself. No one must imagine that it is impossible to attain this, for it is God who does it. Some may say they do not have it. To this I say that I am sorry. But if you do not desire it, I am still more sorry. If you cannot have it, then do have a longing for it. And if you cannot have the longing, then at least long to have the longing. Because of this, the prophet says, I long, O Lord, to have a longing for thy righteousness, that we may desire God in the sense that he may be born in us. May God help us to this. Challenging words from Meister Eckhart. What do we long for? We may say we want God's will to be done, but as he says, when what happens wasn't what we wanted, then we've got a problem. Because we really wanted our will all along. It's a battle of the heart and mind. What I long for and why do I long for it? Do I truly long for the Lord's will to be done, for God's will to be done? And I like that he takes us through that kind of digression, if that's a word, to finally getting to the place, if you don't long for it, then at least pray to have the longing for it. There is nothing better than God's will being done on earth as it's done in heaven. Blessings to you today, and I pray God's will for you in your life today and for me in my life today.